If the only labor that's worth anything to me is the work that I do that gets money, then most of my life, the things that have made me most miserable are the things that have most value. And like, how the fuck are you, like, seriously, that doesn't make any sense.
That's a good point. I like it.
Welcome to What's My Thesis. I am your host, Javier Proenza, and today my guest is Samuel Scharf. And how you doing, man?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. We're in full summer swing right now, so we are actually trying to hold the line right now with a very, very stuffy space, but the sound is most important, and the show must be impeccable.
I have to say, I'm very impressed with that setup.
Thank you.
That's about an hour in of labor, to come have a chat.
Yeah,
it's really cool. I appreciate it.
Mm. You're ruining the movie magic. And I woke up like this with this place set up.
Yeah, sure. This show put itself together too.
It's super easy. Now it's turning bitter. It went from being like, thank you, to like, oh yeah, you ingrates. All right, man. Well, I kind of know you a little bit because we met through your wife, Megan.
Yep.
And she was on the show. I don't know. At this point, she's probably going to come out before you, for sure. I'm just going to have to space you out by like a couple months.
Yeah, that's totally cool.
No, but I mean, you're not the first couple that I have. Like right now, I'm just interviewing all my friends, and if they're a couple, I'm like, well, that's kind of dick to not invite the spouse,
I actually have to say, Megan got her interview, and I was like, damn, I hope I get an interview.
Yeah, I know. That's one of the things that they say about artist relationships, that it can sometimes get competitive. So I don't want to play any part in that. Everybody's always welcome on the show.
That's good.
And, if two people are married, usually they're both interesting, or at least have the similar interests.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Megan and I at this point, she's leaving now. Bye. We've been doing this for, married on off. I mean,
married on off? You can do that?
Well, relationship wise, I mean, since we were 26 and we got married almost 10 years into our relationship. So we had already established kind of the way that we wanted to operate in the art world and what our goals and aspirations were pretty early. And then moving out to California, and I mean, I'm sure we can get into this, but we've started a lot of artist-run spaces together.
Oh, cool.
And we've kind of always been doing that. So this show is just another iteration of kind of
the show that we're in right now. And what's the show called?
All My Friends Are Architecture.
Okay.
Organized by Megan.
Okay.
I think.
And she just for people who don't remember, she organized the show at what was it called? At the Monte Vista Project.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you were also in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's just that kind of we've always had that longevity of a DIY kind of vibe of how we put shows together, when shows happen, for what reason. And this is, for example, this is something she had kind of in the back burner of her brain for a while.
Yeah. And
then inevitably, because we are so close and married and have the history we have, and I think naturally kind of rub off on each other's patina a little bit. We're included in shows.
Yeah. But it's also interesting to me, because I think that I'm trying to think about the couples that I've interviewed, and I think most of them are not, they are not in the same field.
Sure.
Like you guys are a little bit different in that you have a slightly different. Sorry, hold on.
And we're about, just so everyone knows, we're about 10 feet off of Pico.
Yeah. So you hear that in the background.
Gets a little busy.
Yeah. So So okay, so let me just restart that whole thing.
Absolutely.
I think there's a few things that we've landed on that I think is an interesting conversation, because especially right now I am dating and I'm on the apps, and I tend to prefer to meet people that would rather be where I go, which is Monte Vista and all that art galleries, right?
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, you always hear about the competition between people. And you guys are, of all the couples that I've interviewed, are maybe the most like in the same realm, because you essentially show in the same shows sometimes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's interesting. I wonder if you guys were both like, blue chip gallery level artists, if that, like how that dynamic would change. I mean, I'm not,
Yeah.
that's not to say that it's easy, because like, I'm not diminishing your relationship in any way. I'm just saying that, like, I wonder where that even comes from. Maybe that's just a stereotype, that like the idea that artists can't have relationships together because of the competition.
So throughout this relationship, and multiple friends who are artists of friends of ours have gone in and out of relationships, and I think it is a real issue, right? Like the idea of competition, of who's doing better and when and how, and the riding of the flux of what artists' trajectories are like, for sure, come up. Megan and I pretty early on said to ourselves a couple things, which is like, I find value and trust and support in you being an artist, and vice versa, right? Like,
I'm sorry. I was just laughing at
cheesy.
that. No, I was laughing at the fucking thing, and I just ruined something that you actually said that was really good. Now I feel bad.
And then, like, we don't want to have kids. Like, there's these things that came up very early in our relationship that were like secure points of like, this is how I would like to continue to operate, both as an artist and as a partner. And that synced up very well with what Megan was also looking for. And then I think over time, I'm not going to deny that, like, sometimes I get jealous if she gets an interview or like, these things, but it's also changed a lot. We've went into a couple different cities, a couple different art markets. We've seen kind of where our work fits and where it doesn't fit, when it clicks and when it doesn't. And that, the real impetus for us to come to LA was that we had got to a point in DC where we just felt like we couldn't get anywhere else, and we're not blue chip artists. Yeah. And I don't think it would be the same if we were, because I've seen that also play out with other relationships, other artists that I know and have worked with. Just so everybody knows, I have a long history in working in galleries and museums. I've been doing that for about 20 years. So I've seen the behind the curtains kind of part of that and how it breaks down. And I think there's a part of being an artist that's naturally narcissistic.
Yeah, I know.
And
I have a podcast.
You can't get enough of it. You're like,
please watch my show. Love me and my art. No, but that's interesting. Actually, this is actually kind of like dating coaching that you're doing right now.
A little bit. And I fell into that with a couple of friends who are like, I can't do it. I can't date another fucking artist. Yeah. Because they only want that part of their life. And I don't fit into the equation. And pretty naturally with Megan and I, it was just like, I not only do I don't feel that real deep-seated competition in the sense of like, clearly we work together. We're in shows together. We rub off on each other's practice. But I think it's for the better. And I have tried to date artists in the past and it didn't work out. And I have tried to date
civilians,
if you will. And that definitely doesn't work out because there's just a way that I think and I work that I think it bothers artists, much less it bothers someone who doesn't know why I would do what I do.
What do you mean about that? Like, what do you do?
I mean, for example, like making a piece that no one's going to notice, and it might not even, they might walk by. Like, it's not directly engaging this kind of typical understanding of walking into a gallery, hanging a painting on a wall, selling it, you know.
And for people, like, I can describe it. There's, you know how like sometimes there's like rustic pipes that are sticking out of like the ground at galleries. Well, there's two of them that are real, and then one that's a fake one that he made. And it is an interesting thing because it's almost like you're making art for yourself in a very, you know, like you know that it's happening, and maybe people react to the space differently because it's happening specifically with this piece, right?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, the sister bench to this bench is outside right now, and it's painted matte black, and it's against a matte black wall. And I'm sure people don't totally see that as art in the show. But that's where I'm the most fascinated. That's where I really want to kind of engage a viewer, and then also understand my own practice. And I mean, that's ceramic and it's spray painted like that. I gave people heart attacks when I made that piece because they were like, why would you do that?
Why would you spray paint it? It's a sacrilegious.
Fucking glaze it, put it in kiln, do it the right way. And I was like, no, because I don't know, you know, so
what's the price for something like that, for that piece? So how much you're selling it for? I'm kidding. Obviously, it doesn't feel like you. I mean, it sounds like you would.
I mean, ultimately, every one of my works, if it shows up in a gallery space, is for sale. Like, I'm not trying to.
Does this show have a price list?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a price list in the back.
Can I ask you what the price is for that?
Check it out later. That's $750.
$750. Okay.
Which is, it's not, you know, it's almost. I've had a range of anything from, you know, reasonably $2,000 to at some points, like with larger installations, $5,000. But
I didn't mean to like pry into your finances. That's not necessarily something I do on the show. I was just interested in, because then the other element of that is that when you see it on the price list, then you realize that it is a piece.
It is a piece.
Yeah, like so then that does sort of complete the loop, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And I want people to go to that point of like engaging with the show. They're like, oh wait, that is a thing, and then come back to it.
In the show, does it appear as all three or just one?
Just the one.
Just the one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the other two are clearly part of the.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was like an installation, but I guess you couldn't buy. If it's a price list, you couldn't show a picture of the installation and the parts that you can't take home.
I could figure out a way to saw those other ones if you really wanted, but you know, it was that piece specifically is something that I really find interesting when I walk into a space and it starts speaking to me like, oh, where do I find interest in relating to what's happening here? You know, how can I engage the space? And then also, how can I, if I'm given a chance like this, how can I engage the viewer? You know, because you jokingly said earlier that like I'm making work for myself, but
I mean, I wasn't necessarily fully joking.
During grad school, I had a comment during one of my crits that was like, "You're making work for HVAC specialists."
Yeah,
because I had made these vents and I'd installed them in the space, and I went through the whole process of my grad school without ever acknowledging the pieces. And during one of my last thesis reviews, you know, I announced that I was sitting under one of the works, and the professor in
where did you go to school?
American University for my MFA.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah.
Okay, that's that's a private school, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it from like the DC crowd that are like the international law and you know international relations people, but I don't know their art program at all. So to me, that's like it's just fast. Like I've never heard of anyone going to art school there.
Yeah, and I
how did you? Was it a good program? Are you happy with it?
It was a medium to great program.
Okay,
I'm not gonna.
So I think you didn't finish the. What did your teacher say? I cut off the story. I think
basically that like while that was interesting, and he specifically thought that it kind of fit into the trajectory of where my work was going, that I was making work for people that would look, you know, so that a HVAC specialist would look up and be like, well, that doesn't make sense. That's on a brick wall. There's no way in hell that a pipe would be coming out of it. But at the same time, that was my larger, it wasn't just an issue at American, but it was just kind of my larger contention with the art world. And I had already been working at the Hirshhorn for a couple of years at that point. I'd kind of seen how that side of the world works.
Hirshhorn is a very specific place, though, because it's not even like a blue chip gallery. It's more a museum space, right?
It's very much a museum.
And it's like a DC museum, which is
and within the Smithsonian, it's like the black sheep of museums where they're like, what the fuck are they doing over there? Like, but I love that, and that really got me excited about like seeing and being involved with artwork that I wanted to emulate, obviously, but then at the same time I found inspiration from, so
like, wait, you saw stuff at Hirshhorn that you were that influenced you like directly into this kind of work? Like, who were some influences to this kind of stuff? Because I'm not familiar with anyone that works with that level of subtlety.
I think it's actually not.
And by the way, I relate 100% because like no one notices this show.
Totally. I mean, we've spent the last 10 years putting on artist-run spaces that gets a little bit of notice, but no one notices. I do feel like. I mean, just for example, like very early on at the Hirshhorn, there's a Robert Gober piece that is a leg coming out of a wall that I think for the most part.
A what coming out of a wall?
A leg.
A leg.
It's like a wax cast.
I think there's a regional. You're from where?
I'm from Orlando, Florida, technically.
Holy shit! There's no way that's a regional thing, man. I'm from fucking. We'll talk about being Florida, man.
I cannot. I just told somebody last night. I said I meet more people in LA from Florida than I met in Florida, and I just meant it in the way that like. I just have never felt so connected to the place where I'm from outside of the place when I really personally, Orlando and my history in that state, I wasn't in love with it. It wasn't a great place for me. I had to get the fuck out.
No, it's boring. Florida is boring as fuck. But then you're nostalgic for the crazy shit you did to entertain yourself.
I mean, I just
like fucking wrestle alligators, right? You wrestled. No, I'm kidding. Leading into the stereotype. I
Gatorland, for example, and Christmas. And I just told somebody last night that my summer
Christmas.
The town.
Oh no. Okay.
Outside. Go ahead. My kind of summer school was going to Wet and Wild and just getting dropped off in the morning and getting picked up at night, and sometimes not getting picked up.
Orlando kids are fucking the masters of scam. I'm talking to the camera now so that people know. Or like I dated someone from Orlando, and we used to pull this scam when we went to parks where she would be like, we were in line earlier and the ride broke down, and like I think it was like Jason or something. He told us that if we came back and told you guys, and then they would just be like, okay. And a couple times we got busted.
Anyway, we're on a couple different tangents, but that's a good conversation. I feel,
Florida. No, the thing is that when you like, Florida trumps everything.
It really does. It really does.
Like, I don't think anyone cares about our careers anymore. They want to know about the crazy, wild shit we did.
Did you do in Florida?
Did you ever read? I used to spend some time in, like, Orlando is the only place, and then we'll get off of Florida and we can go back to, but Orlando is the only place where I did ketamine that was not like the normal ketamine. I was like so fucked up, and I didn't know it wasn't like psychedelic in the way that it was just like a different one. I was like, it's like, yeah, this is ketamine. I'm like, no, this is not.
This is different.
You probably gave me some fucking PCP or some shit.
Sure. I luckily got out of there before I really started to dabble into any kind of experimentation. But I can have a pretty fun when I accidentally did meth story from that state. So I don't know. It's just it's a weird place, and I was saying last night as well that like I feel Florida in its own right is it's kind of what I imagine. I've never been to New Orleans. I would imagine that makes that place special, that makes it different than other states. Florida for sure has that. And I think that's what I connect with when I meet people. We were at a friend's house last night, Daniel Newman, who's a really great artist that like also from Florida and like we just have this kind of bond from that.
Oh no, I already know so many things about you. Like I do. Because
where in Florida are you from, though?
I'm from Miami. I'm Cuban.
Yes.
So we used to call it O-Town, Orlando, and I know you guys hate that. And then there was a band called O-Town afterwards, and you guys hated it even more.
Even more so. Sure.
Yeah, no, Orlando's fucking amazing. I've had some really good times, but I will say this, that Miami versus Orlando is like, you guys are so fucking landlocked.
Yeah.
And it is just asphalt, rain, and heat.
And sweating and humidity.
And what I mean by asphalt, rain, and heat is that like rain comes, it lands, it's like, even if it was grass, it would be different, It just radiates, like the sun beams it, and then you just walk through this thick humidity. Even right now, it's hot as fuck in here. I'm not sweating as much.
No.
Like 92 over here, I don't sweat as much as I did at 80 in Florida.
Megan, when we moved, I mean, we were lucky enough to move to Santa Barbara when we came to California. But after that, we quickly got out and came to LA. She was going to grad school there. But California in general. We came to California and I was like, Megan, something is different and special about the weather out here. Mm-hmm. I didn't start sweating at 7 a.m. and I still don't have that sweat on me at 9 p.m. It's really nice. And I just want to respect that because the sun part of my, I'm really responsive to weather and how just sunlight will affect my mood for sure.
Okay, yeah.
And coming from DC, I almost forgot about it. Yeah. And then it just like woke that whole part of my brain up that was like, oh no, you used to wake up in the morning and have this all day, every day. And then that weird thing that happens in Orlando specifically, but Florida, is that you get that 4 p.m. Rain that just rains for like 15 minutes and then it stops.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
And it's just like part of the humidity of just like, there's just so much.
No, there's a humidity cycle and you're just walking through a humidity machine. Yeah, for sure. Constantly. It's like a humidor.
Yeah.
Or a humidifier. A humidor is probably less damp.
Very much so.
Okay, let's go back to the Hirshhorn and the art stuff because I think this is more of as much as I want to know about Florida.
I also want to know about Cuba.
Oh, well, I've never been, so I can tell you a lot about Florida.
Okay.
I didn't go during the Obama years because I thought it would be chill forever.
Yeah, you thought.
I thought it was like, oh, we turned a corner. Yeah. No.
Turns out
America was like, nah.
They're like, just you wait until we.
You can't meet your family.
Sink into our conservative history. So yeah, I worked. Interesting kind of thing happened.
Well, you guys used to run spaces there. I want to get your take on that, or unless you had a thread.
Well, to start was, I left Orlando because I
How old were you?
Internship, 21, going on 22.
So you were like me, a late leaver.
Yeah, I'd finished up undergrad at Rollins College. I was like feeling really. That was a weird moment in my life where I was poor and I was at the school because I had scholarships and I was around a bunch of rich kids that it was just not a good moment. And but I did bump into somebody who had a suggestion to go to the Hirshhorn for an internship as exhibitions. Well, they just said, just go to DC. Like, you'll be fine. You'll figure it out. It's close enough. You can come back if it doesn't work out. But, I am a sculptor and I'm good with my hands. And at that point, I'd really committed to art, I was like, this is what I want to do with my life.
While you were still in Orlando?
Yeah. How do I do that?
Wait, but how did you make that decision on Orlando? That's a very, I mean, it's just an interesting thing because that's not what you like. Even Miami, I think, is considered more of an art town.
100%, very much so. I knew that I needed to leave.
Yeah.
And I knew that if I wanted to really pursue art and art making and understanding art, I needed to get out of there. And
did Orlando have any scene? Like that's what's kind of scratching my brain.
I mean, one of the earliest memories I have personally was being at the Orlando Museum of Art with my mother, who's a huge influence in my art making and my career, and having a moment with a Dwayne Hansen piece where I like sat down to play checkers with the little girl who's at the checker board, and security got upset and we got kicked out.
Oh, you weren't supposed to? No, I thought it was like an interactive piece the way you were telling the story.
Yeah. So that was kind of my art influence. Was my mother was kind of this idea that art was there, right? Like it was accessible. It was, you could find it in places. You could go down to Miami. I mean, Key West, for example, a wonderful place that doesn't have actual physical art, but create it. The ethos of Key West is very artistic. And I just, I knew that I had to leave Orlando because it wasn't giving me everything I needed. But I also knew that I quite frankly didn't have the understanding or moxie even to get up to New York. So this person suggested DC. They said, you can get an internship at the Hirshhorn, figure it out. And the list came back and it was like, do you want to work in the exhibitions department? And I never knew what it took to put shows on. I just thought, like I would imagine most people's shows just happen. But there's a whole team of people and there's a whole process and a whole thing to understanding what it means to design a show, how to hang a car from a ceiling. Like these things come up where you're just like,
it comes up.
Yeah, it comes up and you learn pretty fast.
Hanging a car from a ceiling.
And I learned from, luckily learned from professionals that had been doing it a long time and took me under their wing. And
well, it sounds like you pretty much started a career.
Yeah, well,
from there, right? Because that's like you've been working in. It seems like you've had a career since you were like in your early 20s, which I'm jealous as fuck of. All of a sudden,
I mean, I don't want to presume, but like I grew up lower middle class for sure. Like my parents,
no, I did not.
My parents
I fucking was like,
I mean, you have these fancy cameras and microphones. I don't know.
No, I did not grow up well. I grew up well off. I did not grow up poor.
Yeah. So for me, figuring out a way, and this is something I'm kind of overall interested in, especially since coming to LA. But like figuring out a way to make income and then make my artwork became very clear very fast, because I wasn't going to make money off my art immediately. And I still don't really make money off my art. But I knew that I needed to supplement that engagement. And I want to make art with my money. It's what I spend all my money on. Yeah. Like
I can relate.
Yeah, you're like you get it. But I wasn't going to get that money from my family.
Yeah.
So I knew pretty quickly. I was like, I have to do something that I can, supplement that engagement, because I was spending money on art like most people spend money on cars or whatever else they decide to splurge on. But there was no questioning how, at that point I was making things that I was already doing guerrilla installations that were outside and things that I knew this wasn't the typical kind of relationship with a gallery to sell artwork. So the only way I knew how to do it was do it myself. And exhibition work and being a prep offered me something that, like, I had at that point I didn't have my master's degree, but I knew that I could make $30 an hour, which
that's not fucking nothing.
That's nothing
at 22, or 21.
Yeah. So I had a lot of credit card debt, and I just kind of felt like, it got me through the point in life where at the time, we don't have to get in this, but my father was sick / becoming sicker, and I was taking a lot of trips, and I was spending a bunch of money on my art, and I just there was just this moment where I was like, how do I keep doing the thing that I want to do and responsibly make the income to be able to,
like help your dad?
Yeah. And it went fine. And then I got to a point where I needed to follow through on kind of my own personal engagement. That's what took me to American, because we were already in DC. I had already met Megan at that point.
What was its reputation as a program? That's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it's not known for its art.
It's a great school, though. It's like, it's fucking top tier.
Hey, and when you're in DC, you can't, there's GW, of course, and there's other schools that, Georgetown. That
I just don't even think of those as school that have art programs. Yeah. Even GW, like that's what I'm saying. It's on that level of like fucking neoliberal tastemakers.
100%.
It's like a fucking feeding thing to the what's it called? The not the IMF, the World Monetary Fund.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Monetary Forum. Sorry.
But at that point,
Economic Forum. Jesus Christ. Charles Schwab, that motherfucker.
I had already been in DC for almost 6 years. So I fell in love with the city that was post 6 o'clock, right? Like that city only has 600,000 people in it.
It drains.
Yeah, there's like 2 to 3 million people that come in and work during the work hours, and then they leave. And the artists I was meeting were like, they had nothing. There was no studio system. There's no post-industrial kind of complex of warehouses. It had already was way more expensive than you could afford. There was no real mid-level gallery system to support newer artists coming up. There was a really decent, and what I hold as a very special thing about DC is like kind of nonprofit / the money that comes in from the government in general for arts doesn't get split up the way it does in typical states to different counties and different like micro systems.
Oh yeah,
it basically comes in and they're like, "Fuck, here, please apply," and you could get funding that way, and that helped for sure. But at that point, I already knew it was I needed to go to grad school for myself. I needed 2 years to just not work a job, which I ended up working all the way through, of course, but to really focus on myself, focus on my practice. Like I had applied to a couple different places. American came back pretty quickly and was like, they have a very soft sculpture program, and they were known for painting. And at the time, I was kind of still making painting, but I knew that it wasn't my trajectory. I wanted to get more into sculpture, but I wasn't going to be like I wasn't going to go to like University of Maryland and be like a welder. So I knew that I was kind of interested in getting into something that was a little bit more, just DIY and kind of, there was a professor there at the time that I was very interested in meeting and kind of working with. That's the way it went. And I just signed up immediately because at that point in my life, I just needed to go. I just needed to do something for myself.
Where did you do your BFA?
At Rollins College.
Where's Rollins?
It's in Winter Park, Florida. Little town on the outskirts of Orlando.
That's not a nothing school, though.
No, it's not. And had I went for business or anything other than art, I would have maybe had a whole different life. Yeah. But
so that's your pattern, going to like amazing schools for the thing they're not for.
They're not great at. Yeah.
No, not good. Not good at, but not known for.
No, yeah, totally. But also finding people in the program and professors and threads of thought that are maybe only in those places because they're not preconceived with the idea of being something bigger than themselves, right? Like I really did find a couple of professors at Rollins specifically that kind of spearheaded my art trajectory. I was playing basketball at the time. I was really obsessed with that, but I had to like
How tall are you?
drop every 6'2".
60. Okay.
I had to drop everything once I figured out that I could like take photographs and that I was doing a lot of ceramics at the time. I mean, I've basically touched every medium at some point. And I got a lot of support there. And I think that was huge because I was making art in high school, but I didn't really know what it meant. You know, I was just like, intense, like 30-hour renderings of drawings that was like, yeah, look at that. That's pretty, right? But I hadn't really got deep into the understanding of making and why I was making what the relationship with the thing I was making and myself. That kind of engagement, I just hadn't even begun to explore. And Rollins opened that up, and then I left pretty immediately because Orlando. And, and then I ended up in DC, and luckily enough on a path of working behind the scenes in museums. And I got to see the way things operate and how the soup is made.
How did that start? Like who? Like you guys? Did you guys start together on the DIY scene? You and Megan, like running DIY spaces. Was that a collaborative thing between you guys? Had someone done it before?
So one of the beautiful things about DC is that there's a great punk.
Yeah, that's
vibe.
Yeah,
it's not just music.
Well,
it's just
Bad Brains is
an
fucking
ethos in general.
Yeah.
But then, for example, Bad Brains, like you'd go to the National Gallery of Art. I think it was Air and Space actually, and one of the guards was the trumpet player.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're just like, what the fuck?
Like you're like the fucking biggest thing, but you still got a day job.
Yeah. So that was influential to me for sure. You know, I was seeing like Ian Mackay at the coffee shop. I was just seeing like people. He wasn't working at the coffee shop. Let me just clarify that. But my point being is like
that's not punk.
No. You know, there's just a vibe overall in DC that is very like, if you want it, you just have to make it happen. And there's a long history of artist-run spaces in DC. And when I was finishing up my second year, going into my kind of graduation, a couple of the students, MFAs that were involved, wanted to do something. We didn't know what to do. And we got this house from a professor at the time where we could do anything. We'd rent it out, the whole house. We lived in it, second and third floor. And then we could do anything we wanted to on the first floor because we didn't have fucking furniture. Mm-hmm. So it was like, we're going to put art shows up.
Yeah.
And we started this thing called Delicious Spectacle that Megan was involved in.
The what?
Delicious Spectacle.
Okay.
It's now just an archive page. That term and that, I don't really know. Like when you Google search it now, like it comes up with like food stuff and obviously this whole thing. But at the time it was like a Guy Debord reference of like the spectacle in general, the way that we felt that, art was being viewed in DC, the way that we kind of thought about how we could do something that was really tasty in the sense of like, you could come to these shows and it would be something you wouldn't see anywhere else. Like you would just feel that.
Well,
we started that space and that went for like a year and a half.
It's the perfect city for that kind of punk attitude though. I mean, like if you think of everything, it's a city that has daily tourists essentially that come in and to like live and work.
Sure.
And then it's a city that really cares about art. I just matched with someone on a Hinge and like I was like, "Do you like art?" And they were like, "Oh, I'm European. Of course I like art. I like art and literature." And I was like, "Fuck you." I was like, "Do you like conceptual art and contemporary art?" And she was like, "To be honest, no, talk later." And I was like, "Yeah, you fucking poser." I'm sorry. I'm being all punk. No, but it's kind of like that. It's like there is a lot of respect for art in the city.
The galleries are free. The museums are all free.
Yeah, but
it's mind blowing.
But it's like it's a huge thing. But at the same time, like you're going and you're getting inspired. You can't get into these spaces, right?
Yeah,
directly. So it seems like the perfectly prime place for, I think that LA, like a lot of people gravitate towards here, and it's almost like inevitable that is, and I feel like it sounds like DC is inevitable. It's seen as inevitable like that in its defiance to sort of, because I think that a lot of the whole artist run space world is very much about people just validating themselves, right? Like we're not waiting for anyone to tell us that we can make art. Like we just make it.
I'm gonna make this shit regardless.
Yeah, exactly.
It would be nice if I could put this shit in shows.
Yeah.
But if not, I'm gonna start installing it on the street. I'm gonna like find my own way. There's nothing stopping me, and I think pretty early on in the relationship with Megan, it was very. It was like looking into a mirror where I was like, oh man, this fucking woman is strong. Like she's she's gonna find a way to do it. There's not gonna be no apologies about it. And like, we just have to figure out how to do those things. And Delicious Spectacle started that kind of energy. Mm-hmm. And then, the minute we landed in Santa Barbara, I had finished grad school and I said to her, we go anywhere you get in, like just apply to grad school, whatever. She got into SVA and Santa Barbara, UCSB.
School of Visual Arts.
Yeah, in New York.
And then Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara.
And SVA was like $72 a year, and they were like, no help.
Yeah.
They were like, we don't care. If you don't want to come here, there's a line of people behind you that'll pay to come here. Yeah. And it just didn't, like, we had spent a lot of time back and forth in New York at that point, and we knew it was New York or LA, but we knew nothing about LA. Yeah. And then we came to UCSB, and like, we had luckily met this amazing artist, Patrick Melroy, who later married us, but he gave us a tour. He was a grad student at the time, just really kind of sold us on it. And then we got there, and then they were like, yeah, I mean, the first year's like, I don't know, 10, 12. Second year's free because you're a resident. And we're like, oh, fucking California.
How long ago was that? Like, UCs aren't free anymore, are they?
Yeah, it was probably 8 years ago.
Okay.
Well, we just celebrated 8 years in LA on July 4th. Megan's birthday is July 14th. 2 years before that, so almost 10 years ago.
It's interesting. I feel like LA is one of those. There's a few cities that you count how long you've been, almost because it's like, It's like I fucking survived, bro. Because you see so many people leaving the city and shit.
Megan's brother was in New York at the time, and he had this thing where it was like, I can't call myself a New Yorker until I've been here for 10 years. Yeah. And he made it like 8, maybe 9. And he was like, fuck that, I can't deal.
Yeah, New York is rough.
It's so intense and stressful, and like why you wear that on your shoulder is like a badge of pride is confusing. But we got out to California, we're like, oh, what the fuck this is amazing. And quickly after leaving UCSB, we started a project at our space downtown in LA called Gate that was on the rooftop, where we were doing shows on the roof that were just open as could be. But
open meaning that like just like not egalitarian, essentially. Yeah, like you apply, you get in.
Well, that, and then also you could come see the show at any time. Oh, okay. Like we just installed it outside. We told all the artists, like, this is how it's going to go. We're going to put your pieces outside. They'll be up for like a month. We really prided ourselves on doing shows every month. So we did that for almost a year and a half before it just got like, it was too crazy with the building and it was a really beautiful moment. LA in general, I mean, we had friends with shows in elevators. We had friends with shows in cars. We had friends with shows in. Are
you talking about? Is this recent?
I mean, you know
Elevator Mondays.
Yeah. And there was a real thing. Barbecue was popping off at the time. Yeah. Like there was these things that were like. In general, it felt like the artist run scene in LA at that moment was really, really strong with just opportunity and space. And we just were doing it at the same time. We're like, now, almost 6 years later, I'll meet someone in a bar, we'll be talking, and I'll be like, boy, I used to go to this fucking space. It was on a roof. I saw the coolest show there. And I was like, oh, yeah. What's that called? They're like, it was called Gate. Like, I don't really know what happened to it. They were like, oh, okay, cool. Like,
that was you guys?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It is nice also where it's like they're like these little explosions. Even if they're short lived, it is nice.
Yeah, I think there are problems with the artist run space scene for sure.
Yeah.
Gentrification, issues with bringing people into spaces that aren't in or from the neighborhood. But overall, as an ecosystem of art support for artists, I personally hadn't seen or been a part of something, because when we left DC, it was very much like the conversations we were getting to were like, what are we going to do? Like, how do we become New York? Or how do we, like, what's going to happen? Like, this is just not it was very much like it just didn't feel like the conversation was going anywhere else than like, there's nothing we can do about this.
Yeah.
And then the minute we got started in LA, it was like, there's everything we can do. Yeah. We can do it wherever the fuck we want to do it. We can try this. It can work. It cannot work. In some cases, it can get protested or it can not get protested. Like, there was the ways to navigate the system that I think were empowered by artists for artists. And, you know, at the end of the day, it is us showing our friends. It's always been that.
Yeah, they're basically house parties, essentially. They become that, where strangers are invited to.
But some of the best relationships and some of the best connections I've made in LA have been from those shows.
Yeah, 100%.
And I just, you know, if you're involved in a system, which we can get into a larger conversation about the market, and, you know, I've worked for blue chip galleries. I know that side of the world, but as a healthy relationship for artists doing what artists need to do to show and to make things and to feel supported, and not getting that from, you know, this isn't Canada, it's not Berlin. We're not getting money to be artists. No. And when we say we're artists, it's different because people are like, well, are you making you're living off art? And it's like, fuck no. No one. I mean,
not in this country.
No. And
in this economy.
And honestly, how much of that conversation is really masked behind this facade that social media has put on, where you feel like, look at me, I'm doing it, I'm making a living off my art. It's like, I know you have a day job.
Yeah.
And we never talk about that shit. And
Wait, do you find a lot of people front like that?
A lot of people, for sure. Definitely.
Maybe you're more straddling that line then. Because I just know a bunch of like fucking degenerates.
But even at some of the galleries I was working at, the 80% of their roster would be professors, or they'd have some kind of side gig. Or you know. I mean,
it's actually funny
it's not
because
glamorous to talk about.
No, it's funny because I think a lot of people are probably straddling. It's almost like if you have a day job, you have more legitimacy too, because if you're a professor somewhere, it's like, oh, not only does he make art, he teaches.
Sure. Totally.
What a mystique. Oh, he gives back to the fucking rich kids. No, I have my issues. I totally respect and get how like academia helped you sort of break out and how get these opportunities, right? Like especially with going to American University. But
I mean,
it was years ago.
Give me all that debt.
Yeah.
So much debt.
But it's interesting. I do like that. I mean, look, man, the reality is that the blue chip world, I don't know how legitimate the blue chip world takes Hunter Biden. So maybe that's not fair, but that motherfucker is selling artwork and he doesn't even need a fucking day job, but he gets the best day jobs.
There's that whole movement of like celebrities making paintings and them getting some kind of, I just don't think, I mean, that's just capitalism. It's just the reality of celebrity mixed with the fact that I can make something or I can have somebody else make it and I can.
Well, I think I don't think his is celebrity. I think that's just straight up like money laundering.
Yeah, but also mixed with a certain amount of like that person's name commands interest right off the bat, right? Like whether you like him or
Yeah.
not.
I just don't think that like blue chip galleries are taking him seriously. I think that like
No, but blue chip galleries are making money. They don't care about. I mean, for the most part.
I wonder who's showing him. Anyway, like
Yeah.
it's that this is more of like a I don't have a lot of data on him. I just know that he likes to weigh his crack and record himself, which we can maybe go back into being a Florida man right here.
Sure,
Here,
right.
can I get you another beer? So
Yeah.
what's the craziest shit that happened to you in Florida,
The craziest shit that's happened to me in
or
Florida.
that you've seen, or that's happened in front of you?
So I definitely woke up one morning at my grandma's house in Altamont. I was probably like 8 or 9. Yeah. And there was a 14-foot alligator in her front yard. And my grandma was a badass. She was like, she'd come out and like chop the heads off snakes with a hoe and just like turn the corner and just like light a cigarette. It wasn't a big deal. But this one even got her a little shook. Like we came out, that thing was huge. And it took 6 full-grown men to try to like wrangle this thing into getting it into the back of a truck. And they ended up just shooting it because they just were like,
It was just too hard.
At some point, they're just like, I don't know what else to do here, but just use the weapon that is totally accessible here to just exterminate this animal. And that was pretty wild from an early on kind of relationship with being in a state where every body of water bigger than 4 feet, I think, has like a 90% chance of having a gator in it. You know,
Nice.
like anything. There's just like a gator at all times.
Yeah.
And you know, that was pretty wild.
Yeah. What was your scene? Were you like, because I know that I remember one of the things that I remember is that the music scene over there is kind of sparse because no one really wants to drive. Maybe Orlando was a little bit better in terms of shows, but Miami, no one came down to Miami.
No one came all the way down.
Yeah. So what was your scene like? Were you like a preppy kid? Were you like
Orlando specifically, it doesn't get the credit that it deserves for actually being a pretty special music scene.
Okay.
I mean, if I'm not in your world, I don't really engage with musicians that really know histories, but pretty consistently Orlando will come up as like a place that in conversation. The EDM scene obviously was huge, but even before that, there were things that got started in Orlando that, because of its geography, it just happened to be a place where, like, when musicians got down into that area and they weren't so suffocated by the southernness of other states, they would do things and be ways that were pretty inspirational. So I dabbled a little bit in that scene. For
EDM
sure.
and all of that?
Yeah, and just kind of the dance kind of in general.
Rave culture?
Yeah, I mean
90s?
Orlando, yeah, we're talking like
Jinkos?
90s.
Jinkos?
Definitely Jinkos.
Okay. So then we're just basically the same person. Except my dad worked for the UN.
There you go. And my dad was a cook. 40 years.
That's a pretty. I'm making the joke because that's a pretty huge difference.
Yeah, no, it
in
is.
terms of privilege and opportunity.
It is, for
but raving is like is a passion. I still bring it up.
Yeah, I just those are the things that I look back at and I'm like, oh, I was actually in a place where there was a good amount of influence and
Did you guys have like a really dope college radio station or something? Because we had WVUM. We also had a really good music scene. Like our music, our electronic music and all of that shit was like super poppin'. Very pop oriented, like synth pop, synth wave kind of shit.
Sure.
And just, well, I mean everything also, you know, like Luke was from there and we can curse on records because of him. So thank God for him.
I think coming out of my undergrad, right, like coming out of my high school into my undergrad, I went to a school that had 5,000 kids.
Yeah.
You know, there
Yeah.
were like race wars. There were like whole pockets of like skaters and cowboys and
Race
different-
wars though? Okay, because we had goth versus jock wars.
Sure.
But never race wars.
There was a full out, like, the SWAT team came to our high school one day.
Between what races? Just blacks and whites, or
No, it was overall frustration. I think had been looming pretty heavily between the, like, well, we don't have to get into it, but the kind of like ignorant white cowboy scene mixed with this idea that, like, you know, definitely the kind of black students and the Hispanic students, Latino, it was just bubbling over
between whites and the minority groups?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it got really
First of all,
nasty at one
are there a
point.
lot of fucking cows in Florida? Because how the fuck are you a Florida cowboy?
There exactly. It's funny.
No, because I mean that is definitely not a Miami phenomenon. I have run into Florida cowboys. That's not.
Sure.
I'm not denying their existence, but that is something that I don't always
That's a really
remember.
good point. Yeah.
But yeah, Orlando definitely has its like.
That's a really good point. There's not really that amount of farming in Florida.
Yeah.
But it was a thing, but I guess where I'm going with that is that, like, that's what I came out of, and then I had the opportunity because I was poor to go to a fancy school and, like, change it. Like, they only accept a certain amount of students that make under a certain amount of income. And then my other option was UCF. And I probably should have went to UCF given my trajectory in Florida at the time.
That's where I partied the hardest, bro. That's where I did that fucking horse ketamine. By the way, what we decided was that, oh no, it's not cat ketamine, it's horse ketamine.
Horse ketamine. Yeah, for
Which
sure.
is very Florida scientific drug.
Oh my God, remember how big G was?
Huh?
Remember how big G was?
Yeah, that's point, actually, like, I never did it.
People were just passing out. During the school day.
Yeah.
Just passing out from G.
I used to do roofies.
It was crazy. And, like, that was like we would go to keg parties and there'd be no keg. Just everyone fucked up off G. And you're just like, what is happening here?
I know you're from Florida because I said I did roofies and you didn't blink.
No. You just did them. You're just I intentionally decided to take
Yeah, I roofied myself. It was fucking awesome. No, I drugs are bad. No, I mean, I did it like once or twice, but it was definitely a thing that we did. And then, did you ever watch the movie Bully?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then you relate to that. Because that's in between us. That's a little bit north of Florida.
Sure.
But I could still see it, what's it called? Demographically being very similar to Orlando-ish.
Yeah, for sure. I also have, like, a deep-seated emotional relationship with Spring Breakers.
Yeah.
Where, like, that's another example.
They never really got too far down to Miami.
They didn't get too far down, but in general, the idea, the ethos of what Florida is.
No, I could see Orlando getting slammed more because if you're doing a road trip, like, why not just fucking get drunk at the first big city, you know? Yeah. But I think Daytona Beach and all of those places were bigger for that.
You know what's crazy is we're talking this much about Orlando. I haven't even been.
Really?
In, like...
Is your family still there?
The last big wedding of a high school friend I went to, which was, like, 12 years ago.
Yeah. I'm nostalgic for it, but I'm not trying to get back, bro.
No.
I love what it taught me. I like being a Florida man outside of Florida because then I'm just like, there's a little bit of a chip on my shoulder.
Sure. Absolutely. You can kind of, like, ride that. But also, like I said earlier, you get to meet people from different areas of, like, you know, what it was like to live in Jacksonville or Miami or...
No, they're very different cities. They're shockingly different.
Or, like, we would, like, take a 30-minute ride and end up in Cocoa.
Yeah.
Or, like, if we wanted to get fancy, we'd go to Daytona.
Cocoa was the surfing spot.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I
remember Kelly Slater dissed on Florida surfing. He was like, because he's from Florida, and he goes, yeah, you know, there's people from places with small waves always say they're bigger than they are, like knee high.
Yeah, sure. Like, man, there's 6 foot waves here and there.
Yeah.
Maybe 2.
Sorry, you were gonna say something, and I told you a horrible joke, a horrible story.
But back, I don't really know where that was going. Back to leaving there, going up to DC, and then ending up in California. The general kind of ride we've always been taking is, where can we do the thing that we want to do? How can we facilitate doing this thing? And then where can we have, even this relationship, right? Like, where you get into a place where like there's enough of a fertile soil of artist-run spaces, podcasts, interviews, somewhat of a level of critique or critical feedback. It's maybe starting to happen more here, but that just kind of immediately felt like, well, this is where we want to be, because we can do these things, we can have these shows, and
there's a lot of community, like it's like that. I mean, I think that is essentially the main thing that I've gotten out of just even doing the show. I mean, now I am definitely trying to monetize it, but the only reason that
How will you do that, by the way? Out of interest.
Just there's different, like, you merch and shit like that. I can break it down for you. It's probably boring podcasting to like break down like, but it basically there's a bunch of different revenue streams. Sure. You can monetize on YouTube. You can have a Patreon. Just the different like basically it's like anything else. You want to diversify your portfolio, because if at any point you lose a revenue stream, you're fucked. You want to mitigate that, right? Like, so, because like, for example, for a while, affiliate marketing was a huge thing. But then, and like, if you were an Amazon affiliate, you used to make like crazy amounts of money. But slowly that program has just become less and less lucrative for people. I don't have that. I'm not necessarily trying to, like, if I would do it, I would probably do like Blix or something as an affiliate.
So are you at a point with the podcast, or in general with what this is turning into, where you feel like do you have to bring income in from it?
I would prefer to do this than have a job.
Cool.
Essentially, I don't have to.
Turns out that's having a job.
Yeah. But I mean,
made your own business.
Yeah, I would rather, like, I would love to even be able to pay guests, to have a paying gig for people that I'm like, hey, come on, I got like $100 some odd dollars for you.
Sure.
But, and like that would be ideal. I think the main thing right now is that, and then there's advertising dollars and whatnot. You can do stuff like that. In the main thing, ultimately, all of this is a skill building exercise, right? Like, sure. I know how to do all this shit, and I have proof of concept. Like, I can prove it, right? And since I've been doing it for 4 years, like, I kind of wanted to up the ante and add to the skills, because I already knew how to do a basic audio podcast.
Yeah.
So, but YouTube is like, it's still the best. Like I said, before we started recording, I said, I don't think that they knew what they were doing when they started YouTube and how powerful of a thing it is. But it's like, it really is a thing where they're like, hey, maybe not everybody gets to use this, because this is like, whoa. We didn't know we were going to disrupt entire fucking news industries, and legacy media was going to be scrambling to keep up with Joe Rogan. You know the difference between Joe Rogan and the most popular guy is Tucker Carlson, right?
Sure.
Like, I think 60% of Democrats even watch Tucker Carlson.
Sure.
So it's not even partisan. He does like 3 million a month.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Rogan does 11 million a month. There is the fucking eclipsing of these. That's why I say I don't think they intended to do this, because that's why all the censorship is the new craze, because it's like, you've given too much power to people to like build up their own fucking things.
Yeah, totally. I think what's fascinating about it is, maybe the delivery system difference, where like the TV brought people to living rooms, and you could choose to turn on that channel and watch them.
Mm-hmm.
What's kind of fascinating about YouTube and in general with social media is that, like, I have to go look for that. Like, obviously I've heard of Joe Rogan, but I would have to go download that podcast and I have to look into it and I'd have to like see something that like then the relationship is immediately different, right? Like the
It's intrusive.
and the choice
Yeah.
to go to that place, you know.
One of the things that YouTube does is that it keeps showing you the same video. It keeps recommending the same videos until it wears you down and you're like, all right, I'll fucking watch it. And then you watch it and you're like, God damn, YouTube, you fucking nailed it. Right? Like it is really, really weird. I mean, not every time, because sometimes like YouTube will really like push me into like trying to get me to watch like right-wing shit, you know?
Well, that
is not a lie about YouTube. That is definitely a
rabbit
fucking
hole podcast. Fucking hit it on the head.
I don't know that podcast.
Oh, check it out. It was like a
limited series.
No, it's like an offshoot of The Daily, and it was basically trying to understand how that movement got so strong so fast, and what its
there's
point
also
was.
There's also people like Teal Swan. Do you know who that is?
No.
So this is like, it's not even just right wing shit. So there is this influencer who's huge on Instagram, and like she's basically a cult leader. And one of the things that's really like upsetting about her is that she uses YouTube with like keywords and stuff to like insert herself into the lives of people that are suicidal. And then her whole message is, it's a weird thing because it seems counterintuitive, but there are people that she has said to that like there was a couple that were her followers, and one of them was on Lexapro or some shit, and they were like, yeah, no, it's fine, you can stay on the medicine, but like you're not going to be on the same spiritual level as we are because it's blocking you, you know. So they got her to get off of that, and obviously she became depressed, and then after that, she started to she just started to say to her, like, you know what? I've never met a soul that wanted to leave this earth more. So eventually the woman killed herself, and then she did a press thing where she was like, she was immediately reincarnated. It's really fucked up weird shit. So like it is like that. This is why I think hopefully eventually where we're headed is algorithm transparency, so that you can be like, oh, hey, we're doing this, you know, like we're promoting this, you know, because even now they will kind of let slip sometimes, but they're not even open about how they suppress media. Like they'll suppress lefty shows, you know, and stuff. So it's really crazy. Like it is a very powerful tool, and I think that they're reckoning with what they've made, because if you want, you know, like if you're invested in a two-party system and that kind of thing, like any alternative information, you know, we're living in a world where like now it's like people don't want you to tell the truth on the off chance that it might be misused.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, who do you think's going to fraction first, Republicans or Democrats?
Oh, I'm not invested in either party. I think I don't.
If we were going to,
in terms of fracture, I don't even know. I think the game is basically consolidate power into these two organizations. I don't think they will fracture.
You don't think they will?
It's a really fascinating industry. I'm really excited, and I feel like I'm starting to get an idea of how the algorithm works after, you know, working on another show that was successful.
Yeah, I mean that's. Good luck, you know. But also, you start to understand the system you're working within, and you adjust, and you're gonna be successful because you make content. I mean, ultimately, it is just it's a longevity game of like, how long have you been doing this?
Yeah,
will you continue to do this? You know, I think at this point, even with our friends and family, there's a thing that goes on where people are like, "Oh, you guys weren't just." Like, this wasn't just like an idea you had to like live in a different state or do a different thing, because this is our life. You know, like I just, you know, maybe we'll talk again in 10 years and we'll be in the same situation. But the reality is, like, I'm going to make these things. I just need an avenue to show them, and a place to show them, and how to show them. And ultimately, that's what I'm interested in. Obviously, I would 100% love and support any kind of financial flotation that could help that. But the reality is, like, this bench is, something people can purchase. If they tell me where to put it, it can be in their house, it can be on a street, it could be in a bus stop, it could be wherever they tell me within reason. I'm gonna make one and put it in that place, because there is a need for people just resting. Like I've driven around the city enough to see that, like, there's just not resting spots, and that comes with a whole nother connotation of issues. But my art can service and purpose that, vice versa, to me also just being interested in seeing something that might get somebody to pay attention to an atmosphere that they're in. So I don't know. I think ultimately, if your podcast is clearly offering people dialogue and a discussion around something that they might not, we wouldn't have this exposure otherwise. There's, no one's going to come through the show and ask us to do a podcast other than you. You're really servicing a thing inside of the community.
No, I appreciate
helpful.
that. I appreciate that, but I also get so much out of it. I mean, it's really just a fucking networking scam. It 100%, this is how it started. It was like 100% transparent, like, hey, I'm trying to meet people. And,
Sure.
And it's just a lot. It's like,
you also make work.
no, I know. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
if I didn't make work, I don't know if I'd be that interested in networking that hard. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, and I think that, I feel like there has to be an audience for something like this. Who knows? But like, I don't know that there's definitely other art podcasts, but we'll see. Like the fact that there are other podcasts just means that they can work, right? Like it's not, the interesting thing about this kind of content creation space is that it's not like when someone works in the same space, that's not your competition. That is an audience that you haven't tapped into. So you could have them on the show. Like, it's like, it really is, it's a very strange economy of like, and it's almost hard not to get caught up in like the ambition of it, right? Where it's like, you start to see things go well and you're like, once you start to get that reinforcement, it almost like stresses you out a little bit, cause you're like, inch it closer.
Now I have to get the next newest thing. I have to do a certain way. But I've never really understood that about the art world in general, which is like, it's not a competition. It's so funny that we put that on it, and yet I think your success doesn't take away from my success.
But I don't think the scene that we're documenting right now is like that. Like that, sure. Yeah, it's very welcoming. When you say the art world, I think it's more of like the Biden.
Yeah, it's the upper echelon.
The blue chip echelon, because that is where, like, when you're dealing with that much money, it's fucking life-changing, I cannot imagine the pressure of depending on my art and being creative to feed myself. Can you imagine that shit? Like, just like, oh my God, if I don't make a piece that sells, I'm not going to get like 10 grand and I'm not going to be able to last for this many months.
10 grand, shit, millions of dollars.
Yeah.
But I'm just choosing not to engage that world. And I don't, it's not interesting to me to go there, but I can only sympathize with how hard it must be to make a cookie. And then everyone comes to you and says, I want that cookie. And you said, well, that cookie's only chocolate chip. And they said, well, I want all your chocolate chip cookies. And so then you just keep making chocolate chip cookies. And then you like, I really want to switch it up and make like a fucking...
It's a Kiriko.
And you eventually you are making variations of a cookie, but you are still making the cookie. And we all know you're doing that. And then you get... What's fucked up is you get deeply involved in this. It's not a pyramid scheme, but it is tax evasion. Like when you
It's
get at that
money
level,
laundering at the very
at
best.
the best.
Yeah.
And we all know how this works.
And I don't necessarily want to serve those people. You know, like I don't want that necessarily to be my audience. I'd like my audience being other artists sometimes, you know?
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that-
the fucked up part is that doesn't bring
money.
financial.
That's why I do the
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah. And how do you reconcile that?
Yeah.
You know, for myself, I chose to have a day job. I will continue to have a day job. That's just a thing that I do to be able to kind of like facilitate my projects. But it's, and I have to say this inside of LA now, after a couple of years, it is an exhausting conversation where it's like, are you an artist? Yes. Do you make a living off your art? No.
Yeah.
But then are you an artist?
Yeah, I don't hang out with that
I just don't want
scene.
to fucking engage at all because that's just such a limited view of what we're doing while we're trying to do it. And
That's just also such a invalidating way to approach labor, right? Like if the only labor that's worth anything to me is the work that I do that gets money, then most of my life, the things that have made me most miserable are the things that have most value. And like, how the fuck are you, like, seriously, that doesn't make any sense.
that's a good point. I like it.
So I just thought of it right now, but I'm feeling it.
Yeah, no, that works.
Well, cool, man. We've been going for a while, and it's like it's 1:27. So I'm more than anything, I'm worried about running out of batteries on cameros.
If you're good, I'm
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I would love to come back.
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely. This is all about starting relationships, dude. No. So anyway, what can we promote for you? We are here at Modest Common.
Modest Comments, and this shows all my friends are architecture. Megan Muller organized it. There are 9 amazing artists in the show.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you. I'm excited that you guys are somewhat like encouraging me and supportive of me because you know, sometimes you get an idea and you don't know if it's at all interesting, but it seems like you guys are into it. So I mean, my whole thing is like there's scenes like this in LA everywhere, and I'm sure that people may be interested in like wanting to know how this scene works, you know?
Yeah, and you're servicing a population that I think it just needs, you know, like we know that we need to put on shows for, 7 of the artists on there. One of them has never shown before in a gallery space, need shows.
Yeah.
That's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And we need this dialogue. We need to have interviews and conversations and talk with people because, you know, hyperallergic may or may not come through.
Yeah.
But we know for sure.
But I can't wait to be so big that no one can get on the show. Like
Exactly. What's my thesis? We'll hit you up in the DMs and you're going to have a fucking interview. It's cool, man. I mean, that's beautiful. I don't, you know, for no other reason than that, I think it's a really nice thing that you offer. And I think that it's part of a larger ecosystem that needs that development because we have to give it to each other.
Yeah.
You know.
No, definitely. Hopefully I'll get rich off of it too.
Yeah. Well, if you're lucky.
Just will it into existence. God damn it. All right, man.
Cool.
Thank you so much. What can we promote for you? You're at Samuel Scharf.
Yep. SamuelScharf.com. My Instagram is kind of a loose idea of my studio practice. And then also at Samuel Scharf. And then come by and see the show. It probably will close before this podcast airs,
but we still plug shows so that people know that motherfuckers are doing shit.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, I think everybody on that list behind you would be really open and happy to have a studio visit.
Yeah, for sure.
So hit them up. You know, let's start that kind of engagement where like
I'm always trying to get introduced into broader communities because everybody has their community, but no one's like a clique. No one's intentionally a clique, right? Yeah. So like, I think that when you try to reach out, people are always like, oh yeah, no. Yeah. Cause everybody wants to expand their social circle in this scene. It's a very friendly scene.
And something about this show specifically is we're in a space that is an architecture forward space.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they started. They came to us because they were like, we want an art kind of artist forward engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have, and Megan specifically, a very kind of common interest in artists dealing with architecture.
Well, the last show was called Infrastructure Lovers.
There it goes. Exactly.
So
they knew that they could get us to come here and do a show that kind of melded those two worlds. So that's already happening.
Yeah.
And now this is happening, and I think that's a really beautiful kind of moment of, just the DIY scene and making sure that like
there's passion to spare.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for being on the show. And we'll check you out next week with another artist that has another topic that will be interesting, hopefully.
Not just Florida.
It's not a guarantee. No, I'm kidding. Guarantee I won't post bad episodes. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.